I was born in 1995. This meant that the YouTube poop boom that occurred between 2005 and 2015 was the ideal time for me to pick it up. I was old enough to understand the vast majority of its jokes, but not so old that I was put off by them. In other words, I was the right age for them to be not too adult and not too childish. And it seems I wasn't the only one into that kind of humour. Many classmates at my primary and secondary school loved a good Master Movies reference, and so did I to an extent, but for me it was YTP that I was really into. There was something about the absurd and often illogical style that YTP had that really spoke to me. The more it caught me off guard, the better. YTP still exists today, but it wasn't the YouTube trend that it used to be. And don't get me wrong, the popular YTPers such as CS188 and things have done a fantastic job at carrying the genre of video edit, especially in a day and age where such a humour is not always appreciated. And cool things are being done under the hood as well. I once came across the longest YTP tennis round, YTP tennis being people making YTPs of YTPs until they get bored or run out of ideas and stop. This tennis round, last time I checked, had about 13,000 rounds, which is absolutely absurd. As well as my favourite solo YTPer, the Rum Chum, who sadly isn't as active today, but has made the majority of my favourite videos. But this isn't about any of those. This is about my favourite group of 4 YTPers in particular, how they rose, fell, and as of today, very little info still exists about them. But we need to set the scene first. We need to go back to around 2009 and 2010. All this guy's reign as the king of poop was soon to end. A YTPer that would later get famous by the hand of Deadmau5 was still laughing their asses off with this fan base at the Mick Mangles video, and Sober was, unbeknownst to anyone, looming on the horizon before fizzling out. Michael Rosen had become somewhat of a YTP star at around this point. His facial expressions were all too perfect not to tamper with, but outside a few videos, they weren't focusing on him. Instead, they put a lot more focus on parodying the heck out of a movie franchise that, not too long ago, turned 40 years old. You may have seen it pop up in the news because of this. These people clearly knew what a cultural significance Back to the Future was, and to deface it, when done tastefully, had the potential to become a huge thing in the YTP scene. It all started, at least for me, when I was recommended a Doctor Who parody from one of them. It was most likely Parking the TARDIS, showing a clip of the Doctor in the episode Fear Her, in which the Doctor parks the TARDIS up against a metal container. I had most likely clicked on it expecting the actual clip, as there wasn't any indication that it was a parody from the title or thumbnail. What was tampered with in that parody was that the Doctor then proceeds to park the TARDIS up against the other container, and this goes on for a while. He does finally park it correctly, only for one of the quartet's many signature recurring jokes to happen, in this case, an explosion. This was a joke most often used by Revenge of Lee, the first YTPer I had discovered, although at the time they had gone by a different name, Return of Lee. From what I could piece together, they may have gone under a third alias before I had even discovered them, which to my understanding was Looney Levy, although this is going off of a lost media video that had several years of potential misremembering between the last time I saw it and the moment I'm writing this, so take it with a grain of salt. From now on I shall only refer to them as Revenge of Lee. Through my obsession with Revenge of Lee's videos, I had learned about his mate. It's time to introduce the second of this quartet, G.W. Sampy. G.W. Sampy had a similar style to Revenge of Lee, focusing slightly less on clever video edits and a bit more on absurd humour and music-based jokes. Think of a looping sample of Art Attack's Archie song mixed with a marching tune briefly heard almost completely isolated in Back to the Future 2. This is probably the one I ended up watching most during their prime time on YouTube. But of course I've got to introduce the other two. Their names are Back to the Lol and McFly Farm, and once I knew the first two, the other two quickly followed. I even took somewhat of a liberty to mention and sample them a lot back when I was making edgy crap. And although that channel of mine is gone now, a lot of it managed to survive the test of time. Or at least the audio of a lot of them did. Appearing frequently as audio snippets in my noise/plunderphonics album The Scube 40 Classics on Bandcamp, which is still up today. This is not a plug. Do not listen to it. It's dumb. Instead, I'm moving swiftly on and pointing out that although I was much like them, just messing around and making hot garbage, it was never my intention to become the fifth of this group. Luckily, they never considered me one, and so, for a while, it was just those four and a few fan channels, such as mine, Gazmetal, and also one with a aquatic-looking helmet for a profile picture, I believe. I do not know anything else about that last one, though, so I'm going to move on. For a couple of years, the group had stabilised into this form and had dubbed themselves the Professional Video Makers. And that was that. Life for them had seemed to settle and become YTP history. No, they didn't make YTP history. I mean, they literally became history. Like seriously, out of those 4 channels, only one still has its videos available, and its most recent video is, as of writing this, 14 years old. The last still standing video of any of theirs is currently closer to the start of YouTube than it is to the present day, and not by a small margin either. So, what happened? Nobody knows, but I have an idea. Although I was going through my own troubles at the time, which made it very difficult for me to interact with them at around the time they started posting less regularly, there is one huge potential clue present as to why at least one of them stopped. I forget which video it was, and I forgot what the comments said exactly, as this too is lost media, so again, I'm trying to remember what the comments said exactly out of memory after having not seen it for years, so take it with a grain of salt. But at some point GW Sampi had replied to a comment on one of their videos roughly saying the following: "Fun fact, Universal has actually tried to sue me once. Seriously." Now take that with an extremely big grain of salt, because there are many things that could invalidate this claim. First off, I may be misremembering the whole comment. It could have said something slightly different, which in its context, which I remember I'm missing, could have meant something else. Hell, it could have been something I dreamt once they didn't actually say it. They could have been joking, they could have been exaggerating, they could have been outright lying. But if it's true, it offers a huge clue as to why they eventually stopped. While not 18 yet when most of their videos were made, they did also live in the UK at the time, and yes, you can technically be sued in the UK even if you're younger than 18. You're just not forced to take responsibility for the debt until you turn 18. Was the UK law different back then, though? Maybe. It's hard to tell ever since Brexit made a mess of things, but let's not make this political. It's not a far-fetched idea, though. Companies are awful. The bigger the company, the more likely they are to be awful, and the more awful they are if they are awful. GW Sampi and the other 3 were playing a really dangerous game. YTP has almost never agreed upon to fall under fair use, and that's a surprise to no one. Could it be that GW Sampi realised that they were being much more vulnerable once they came of age? Perhaps. But it could be that, and or the fact that all 4 of them were simply out of ideas. GW Sampi was not the first to go, though. I don't recall exactly at what point everybody's videos were privatised, nor when they decided it was best that their respective channel went afterwards. All I know is that the first signs of decay, that is, the first 4 to privatise everything, was actually McFly Farm. Being the last one to join the team, they had seen the least success. If I had to guess, though, the most feasible reason they made their videos unavailable was that, lack of ideas, and being sick to the teeth of fighting Universal to keep their video back to the head 10 on YouTube. Not to mention they switched to vlogging for a few videos after the losing battle, and was unfortunate enough to get the worst parts of the fan base, because if I recall correctly, all of his vlogs didn't get a single like total. Plenty of dislikes, though. And that made them even more infamous. Poor guy honestly couldn't catch a break, and I don't blame them for what they did. After that, it's a blur. All I really remember is that it would seem Revengefully wanted to repurpose their channel at some point by changing their profile picture to... But it begs the question, where are they now? None of them were really obligated to stay on YouTube making YTPs, so could it be at least one of them was spotted elsewhere? The answer to that is yes. At least one of them has appeared elsewhere. Can you guess which one? Yep, it's GW Sampi. Continuing on with the non-YTP content all the way up till their last known appearance on the internet, which was apparently 2-ish years ago, commenting on the state of generative AI on Reddit. But my point being, there is absolutely no denying that the legacy of this always underground but now downright unknown quartet is officially over. Still known by a relatively microscopic audience, but as this former Redditor put it beautifully, GW Sampi is who I give credit for really getting me into poops. Fuck You is one of the first poops I watched. During that golden age of poops between 2008 and 2011, GW Sampi, Lee and Back to the Law made some real golden poops, mostly BTTF related. I was sad when they stopped uploading, but it highlights a really funny and original time in YTPing in that way. Let's not forget the other 3 though, they all played a role in this whole story. That said, people move on, and much like these 4 have, much like I have, I also have to look back on a rather important time in my life. A time that's long gone and buried, little evidence of it even existing still remaining. But honestly, that's not to say they didn't make an impact on a handful of people out there, perhaps doomed never to meet again. GW Sampi's style in particular heavily shaped my YTP joke preference, which led to my love for the aforementioned Rum Chums content. Sappy as it sounds, I couldn't have put it better than one of the most famous quotes out there. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened.